this is Sam Lott, and welcome to the Sam Lott Music YouTube channel. Now today, I'll be continuing on with my three-part review of Peter Jackson's The Beatles Get Back Disney Plus series, with my thoughts on episode 2. Now in the first part, I reviewed part 1 a couple of days ago. That was my last video. So today I'm getting on to episode 2. So let's do it without further ado. So episode 2 of Get Back. The first thing to say, they're still at Twickenham Studios, the Beatles, and there's a meeting, kind of like a little meeting at the start of the episode. You know, when with Paul McCartney and Linda and Ringo and the director Michael Lindsay Hogg, Neil Aspinall, the road managers there, and Mal Evans, and it's an interesting scene. Because George had left the band briefly and John hasn't shown up for this particular session, and Paul says, and then there were two, and it's an interesting moment because the camera kind of focuses on Paul at this particular scene, and he looks, it's a very emotional moment, and then John did show up later on at the session, but he was about an hour late, and so if you just a recap at the end of the last episode where George left because he was unhappy, he'd had a couple of disagreements with John and Paul, and maybe some things going on privately, I don't know, with his first wife Patty, maybe they'd argued or something had happened. But in episode 2 now, John, Paul and Ringo, they met with him again, with George again, and they tried to convince him to rejoin the band, and he decided to rejoin on the condition that they moved to the Apple Studios, which they'd set up on Savile Row, London, and that's what they do. And there's an interesting moment when the camera has footage of George walking towards Savile Row, and he's got a cigarette in his hand, and he looks up at the camera, kind of gives a smirk, and that's very interesting that there is footage of that, and well, all this footage is really intriguing. So when the band get to this, they set up at Savile Row at the Apple Studios. Glyn Johns, the engineer, sets up, and George Martin, the producer's there. He doesn't have much of an involvement, but he's there to observe, and you can see the band are immediately, they seem happier straight away, and the atmosphere seems to be 10 times better than how it was at Twickenham. And there's not many arguments, none at all really, and they seem to be getting on with each other very well. And the band and the director Michael Lindsay Hogg, in this episode they continue with the talk about a live show to end the month. And at the moment the consideration was Primrose Hill in London for the time being. That's where they were going to do the live show, and that was what they had in mind. Take a sip of tea. So moving along, Billy Preston, the keyboard player who had been friends with the band since they played in the early days in Hamburg in the clubs. He was in London to do a couple of shows, and he pops by to say hello, and they need someone to play keyboard, so they ask him to join, and he seems over the moon to join. And there's a great moment when they bring him in, and he shakes their hands, and they get to know him again. And when Billy's brought in, there's a scene of him playing on "Don't Let Me Down" and "I've Got a Feeling," the songs, and he just lifts the mood when he's brought into the session, and they really get along well with him, and they get along with each other. And the series, the episode continues, and it shows the band having a laugh, rehearsing a lot of songs, especially Get Back a couple of times, Don't Let Me Down, I've Got a Feeling, Two of Us, Dig a Pony. And there's a particular moment when they stand up to do a rehearsal for I've Got a Feeling, and they do 1, 2, 3, 4, do the counting, and Glyn Johns from the control room says, "Go on," and Paul's like, "You what?" And they kind of have a joke with him, "Don't interrupt us, we're stars," And it's very funny, and then they go into kind of an ad-lib of John singing "Help" in a northern accent, "When I was younger," and Paul is in stitches, and he has to sit down, and there's great there's great moments, funny moments, and interesting moments throughout the episode. And moving along to when Paul's talking to the band about the footage he has from the previous year when they went to India to study meditation with the Maharishi, and Paul has all the film in his house, and he's considering putting it together to make a documentary, and he just talks about the footage and everything, and it shows footage of them in India, very rarely seen footage of when they were in Rishikesh in India, and again it's very interesting, and what Paul talks about, and the footage, and then they moving along with the talk about live show. They consider the I think Paul's main suggestion is going onto the rooftop, which did end up in that way, and him and Ringo and Michael Lindsay Hogg and Mal Evans the roadie, they go up onto the roof to kind of test the waters to see what the balance is like, and what it would be like to perform on the roof. And there's great footage of them climbing onto the roof, looking down over Savile Row, looking over London, and the footage is amazing because, well, that's certainly I had never seen that before. That sort of candid footage, and of them on the roof. And the episode finishes off with they're just rehearsing Let It Be for the first time, Paul's song on piano, and they're going through a lot of takes of it, still having a laugh, and but at the same time, trying to get a song done. And so I was very impressed. I preferred episode 2 to episode 1. I think just with the atmosphere had been lifted, they moved studios from Twickenham to Apple, and the vibe is very good throughout, I think, and I really enjoyed it. And so that's my thoughts on episode 2 of the Beatles Get Back. So of course the next video will be my thoughts on episode 3, last but not least, which will be on very soon. So yeah, as usual, I hope you enjoyed the video, and feel free to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.